let's start this podcast off talking about the trio of 2025 commits to Syracuse football recently, all in the class of 2025. Quarterback Rich Belin, defensive lineman Nathan Nyandoro from Canada, and wide receiver / athlete Gabe Daniels, all recently committed to Syracuse football in the class of 2025. Let's start off talking about the quarterback commit, Rich Belin, 5'11", 195 pounds from New York, New York. He is a three-star quarterback. He started his high school career as a wide receiver, but then switched to quarterback 2 years ago. And I have a feeling that this kid can really rise in the rankings because he was the New York State Player of the Year last season. The New York State Player of the Year. And he's only been playing quarterback for 2 years and is already a three-star. And I know sometimes we diminish 3 stars, but you still got to be really, really exceptional at football in high school in order to be a 3-star recruit. And Rich Belin has been playing quarterback for 2 years and has already gotten himself to a 3-star rating. And he was just the New York State Player of the Year. So this is someone who I believe can really, really rise in the rankings if you just give it a little bit of time. His older brother, by the way, Henry Belin, he plays quarterback for Duke, so a little bit of an ACC rivalry there. And his younger brother, Blake, is a 3-star defensive lineman who Syracuse is also pursuing. So we could have 2 Bellins on the team. Rich has said about the system that it is, quote, extremely quarterback friendly as the game plan changes and adjusts to whoever is running the show. So obviously what Rich is saying there is that he thinks the offense is very suitable for him and for any quarterback for that matter. And he's really speaking about Jeff Nixon's offense, the new offensive coordinator. And to be honest with you, if his offense is really quarterback friendly, which I hope it is, then Kyle McCord could have a really big year if we're just talking about this year. But regarding Rich Belin, he's saying that the system is very quarterback friendly. The coach has built a relationship with him, which obviously we know is important. And he's got a ton of upside, already the New York State Player of the Year, and he's been playing the position for 2 seasons. Imagine playing something for 2 years or doing something for 2 years and being the best at what you do in whatever state that you are in. That is highly, highly impressive. So I'm looking forward to seeing this guy in an orange uniform. And hopefully, as we monitor his progress throughout next year, which will be a senior season, he can really rise in those recruiting rankings because he really can. It's definitely possible given his upside. Moving on, let's go with someone who might one day be catching passes from Rich Belin, and that is wide receiver Gabe Daniels, 6'1", 180-pound athlete / wide receiver from Norcross, Georgia. He is a 3-star recruit once again. He chose Syracuse over schools like Kansas and also NC State, but he took his visit to Syracuse. He was supposed to visit NC State, but canceled it. And then he did visit Kansas before ultimately choosing to end up with Syracuse. So Gabe Daniels, Syracuse. We're talking about 2025 recruiting here. National scouting analyst Hudson Standish, he recently in an article told Mike McAllister about Daniels and mainly about what type of receiver he is, in that he is a, quote, field stretching wide receiver. If you don't know what a field stretching wide receiver it is, think of someone who can take the top off the defense, a major deep threat, someone who you just say, go long and stretch the defense, right? The safeties all of a sudden have to play back. That opens up the middle of the field for those underneath wide receivers. That's what a field stretching wide receiver does. It's why they're so valuable. The main one on the planet right now that everyone looks up to is Tyreek Hill because he is the best field stretcher out there. This is another guy who can really rise in the rankings as well because, as Standish pointed out in the article, he is a field stretching wide receiver. So he clearly has speed, but he is a 3-star recruit. So that means he needs to work on his other skill sets, right? He needs to maybe work on his hands, his route running. But you can't teach speed. If you have speed and you have size, you can teach skills. You can teach someone to be better at running routes. You can. You can work on the jugs machine for a while and catch a ton of passes and work on your hands. You can do that. But I can't make you run faster. I mean, the coaches can't make you run faster. Me, I can't coach you at anything really in football. But you get what I mean. You can't teach speed. So the fact that Gabe Daniels has speed means that he has upside, and hopefully his other skills develop and he can become more than just a field stretching wide receiver. Field stretchers are just so valuable. You need them. It's oftentimes, if you look at the NFL draft, a player's 40-yard dash for wide receivers will vault them up draft boards, and it will also sink them in draft boards because NFL talent evaluators will often place a lot of emphasis on getting field stretchers because you need to back up the safeties in order to really unlock the middle of the field with your other wide receivers. So getting Gabe Daniels is very, very nice. Hopefully, once again, he develops and maybe becomes a 4-star recruit. Maybe he's still got another year of high school football before he gets onto campus. So those are the two offensive players that Syracuse has gotten in its class of 2025. Quarterback Rich Belin, the New York State Player of the Year, and wide receiver Gabe Daniels, a field stretching speed demon that Syracuse has added. Let's now shift to the defensive side of the ball. A player from Montreal, Canada, the hotbed of football, as they say, Nathan Nyandoro, 6'6", 260-pound defensive lineman. He chose Syracuse over schools like Oregon State and Boston College. Speaking about his visit to Syracuse, he told Mike McAllister, "We did a bunch of cool things, got to play golf for my first time, which was a fun experience. Best part would just be the meals with the coaches and players, which lets me get to know them on a better level." Nyandoro, speaking about his visit to Syracuse, overall, it seems like he enjoyed it based on that quote. And I just want to point out that golf, you might have enjoyed yourself now, but golf is incredibly frustrating. And the more you play, the more frustrated you get. That's all I'll say. Everyone that's played golf knows this, though. If you play golf, you're going to get pretty frustrated. It's just how it is. The ball just doesn't go where you want it to go. And the way I get around it, honestly, is I just blame the clubs, not my swing. It's never my swing. It's always the club's fault. It's always the putter's fault. It's always the sand's fault. It's never my fault. That's the way you get around it in golf. That way you never really are frustrated with yourself. You just get frustrated at, your clubs that clearly have a hole in it. Aside from the golf thing, it's another sign that, once again, this coaching staff does a great job of building relationships with these kids. He literally said it. Nathan, in that quote, literally said it. The coaches did a great job building relationships, the meals. When I played travel hockey growing up, mealtime with my teammates was honestly some of the most memorable experiences I had, aside from playing hockey. So those are the times where you can build relationships. It's off the field. You can talk about more than just football. This coaching staff really has done a great job of building relationships with these kids, which in turn gets them to want to play for you. So it makes a lot of sense. Overall, in terms of the player, he's got good size for a defensive lineman. So once again, you can't teach speed. You can't teach size. Hopefully, he can develop his skill set and become a really, really effective player when he gets on campus. So those are the trio of recruits for Syracuse football in the class of 2025. Overall, I would give it a thumbs up. I am pretty happy about it. We got Rich Belin, the quarterback from New York, the New York State Player of the Year. We got wide receiver Gabe Daniels, a field stretching threat, and Nathan Nyandoro, a 6'6", 260-pound defensive lineman from Canada.